Hello everybody, this is Josh Spicer from GameWisdom.com. Welcome to today's critical thought. It is on the subject of morality in games. This is of course a very touchy subject, and because of that we're going to stay away from real world morality and just focus on what we see in video games. Because I'm sure no one would ever get upset or yell at us for talking about how it is in real life. Morality in video games is a very tricky subject to tackle, and it's one that I've seen a lot of developers fail on. Now, we'll talk about my little guys over there in a second. When it comes to morality, one of the biggest problems or one of the challenges of the game is basically deciding how far you're willing to go. When you look at a lot of games, it goes either, super evil or super good. Either you're going to be a white knight, help old ladies cross the street, you're always going to give, or you're a rotten bastard who kicks puppies and throws orphans into trash cans. The problem with that kind of morality is that when it's so extreme like that, it's very hard for the player to relate to it. And what we've seen in some of the best cases of morality is when we talk about the shades of gray. When you're doing the right thing for the wrong reason, or the wrong thing for the right reasons. One of the original things that made Breaking Bad so fascinating was, of course, Walter White making drugs while trying to pay for his cancer treatments and help his family. Now, of course, the series did evolve more than that, but we're not going to talk about that. That's a whole nother topic. When it comes to video games, one of the problems with morality is that developers tend to have trouble with what I've dubbed soft and hard choices. I've written a lot about that over the last few years. A soft choice is one that essentially lets a player define an aspect of themselves or affect the game short term, but it doesn't affect how the game is played. An example would be choosing what color your shirt's going to be, or all the little choices you see in Telltale Games Avengers series. The ones that, he'll remember that, she'll remember that, etc. These choices aren't going to change how the plot goes or change major events. A hard choice is one that essentially creates a permutation in the game, or effectively a split in the road. This is when you have like the major choices in a Telltale game, or if you decide to let someone live or die in an RPG, and the major events in just about any BioWare game. Hard choices sound great, but you need to realize, for every hard choice, that must create a permutation. So it must create a different path in the road. And then for each permutation or every hard choice on top of that, it creates more things to keep in mind. This is why Mass Effect just became such a monster of a game by the end that the developers had to essentially lock the endings into 3 specific ways, or what was the original path for that game. Because there was no way in hell they're going to define a unique ending for every hard choice in 3 complete games. It just wasn't going to happen. So when we talk more about morality in video games and where things get more interesting is when developers pursue hard choices that effectively warp the game or change around them. And there's a very good example I want to talk about in a few minutes. But let's get to my little props. This little guy, if you're a fan of Atlas and the Shin Megami Tensei games, you should know who he is. I'll let you guys Google him. But the real thing that I want to talk about is Shin Megami Tensei Nocturne. This is the strategy guide by Double Jump, and it's not so much a strategy guide as this is a lethal weapon. This is a 400-page guide. You could kill someone with this book. Just like drop it on their head or hit them really hard, and they'll die from this. I mean, this thing is massive. You could lift weights with it as well. And the reason why I want to bring this up as my prop for today is that the Shin Megami Tensei games, hopefully that will stay up, have been dealing with morality since their inception, especially the main branch games. And what they do is something a little bit differently. They do not adhere to a mainstream or traditional rules of good and evil. Again, when you start talking about that, it becomes very cartoonish or very much for like a children's cartoon. But today, with stuff like Steven Universe, they may not even be an apt description. But in a lot of cartoons, the good guys are always good, the bad guys are always bad. In the SMT games, what they do is have essentially 3 rules of morality: order, neutral, and chaos. And you notice I didn't say good or evil there. And the reason is that they define them in terms of philosophy instead of morality. Order represents essentially a patriarchal system. Everyone has a place and they must stay within it. Everyone essentially gives themselves to a higher power. It's about the community rather than the individual. As long as you fill your role, you are of service. If you decide to deviate, then you are an enemy and must be killed. Chaos represents pure Darwinism. It's about might makes right. Everyone can do whatever they want. And basically, it's about your willingness to basically be the top person. If you want to do something that you believe in, then you fight for it. And whoever's the strongest is the one in charge until they are beaten and are replaced. And of course, neutral represents you're not adhering to either one of those rules. And what the Shin Megami Tensei games do in this front is that they always introduce the player as being neutral. You basically play you in the game. And your friends will essentially become the extremes of these moralities or these philosophies. You always have one friend who will believe in order, the other one will believe in chaos, and you'll be forced to decide who you side with or decide not to side with anyone. Now, the problem with the Shin Megami Tensei games in terms of taking that further is the same that we see with a lot of games that deal with morality. And that is the world never really conforms or changes itself based on your morality. You're still going to be doing the same things. There are obviously some path differences. Some bosses will be different, some you won't fight. But the story itself will remain largely the same. It's what we see in a lot of BioWare RPGs. The main path or the main narrative will remain usually locked. I saw this with, Knights of the Old Republic, and even the Telltale games as well. No matter how much of a bastard or a good guy you are, the main plot has already been decided for you. And no game is more epitomized as that than BioShock. Now, BioShock is a game we could, of course, spend another critical thought on. But the point that I want to bring up is the big choice about the Little Sisters. Whether to save them and take a less atom, which means less upgrades, or killing them and getting more for the short term, but basically making you an evil bastard. The problem with BioShock is that, again, it fails to capitalize on the shades of gray of morality. If you sacrifice a little sister to get the strength you need to save 10 of them, then isn't that doing the wrong thing for the right reasons? Likewise, if I don't sacrifice the little sisters and I don't have enough atom to win, then I'm basically dooming them all. Now, of course, when we start talking about this, we're getting to a lot of very tricky and very gray issues that a lot of developers either don't want to, don't think about, or just don't want to have in their game. But there is one example of a game that I want to talk about that really dealt with these kinds of shifting the world or shifting the game based on the player. And I'm sure if you've played the game, you know which one I'm going to talk about. But I'll give you a second to think about it while I grab a sip of soda. And that game, of course, is Undertale. Undertale is a brilliantly subversive game, dealing with both morality as well as the perception of the world on the player. And to talk about why, I'm going to have to spoil it. So I'm going to give you guys 10 seconds. If you don't want to be spoiled about Undertale or want to go into it blind, end the video now or skip to the end, whatever, because we are going to have to spoil it. Alright, here we go. 3, 2, 1. Undertale has 3 main paths. Now, if you want to get into the details, there are slightly more than that, but in terms of the overall philosophy of the game, there's 3. There's neutral, pacifist, and genocide. For a new player, you will most likely go down the neutral path, which is what you'll do in most RPGs. You'll fight the bosses, you'll fight enemies, but you're not going to go out of your way to kill something unless it means getting through to the end or getting what you need to survive. The brilliant part of Undertale is the fact that you don't have to fight any enemy, and this includes the bosses. You can win them over with kindness, which is a major part of the game, and what is the pacifism run. Now, what happens in Undertale is as you lock yourself into these paths, the game will start to conform or warp around them. If you're going to be neutral, it will keep a neutral tone. It won't be too lighthearted, but it won't be too evil either. If you go full pacifism, the game will start to contort around that. Item descriptions will become more friendly, people will be a lot more joyful, even the music will sound a little bit more happier. And in that case, Undertale becomes this tale of friendship and overcoming adversity and winning people over. Everyone's happy, yay, the world's nice and good and all that. Then you go the genocide route, and things take a very, very sharp turn. To go genocide, you have to explicitly kill everyone. That includes the bosses, that includes the neutral enemies, or neutral characters I should say. And when you start going down that route, things begin to change. The music becomes very ominous. The AI characters or the shopkeepers, the neutral characters, will start saying things about you, or they'll start to be very worried about you being around. In fact, some villages will basically close down because they don't want to be out on the street with you around. Item descriptions become more menacing. It's no longer about you using a toy knife. It's about you using a butcher knife with blood on it, and you love the feel of slicing people, kind of thing. And what happens is that not only will that change, but the bosses will become a lot more nervous around you, and even though your character doesn't talk, they'll start to sense there's some malevolent force. Now, what the game does to even hammer the point home that this is not a good option to take is that there are two different boss fights that are extremely difficult. The Undying fight, and then fighting SARS. I think that's his name. I'm going to have to probably look that up. But when you fight them, they know that you are an evil bastard, and the fight goes extreme. And if you haven't looked that up yet and want to be spoiled, definitely Google or watch on YouTube someone fighting those bosses on genocide mode. And then if you completely commit to it, you get a completely different ending and one of the most disturbing things I think seen in a game. And I've been tempted to try Go Genocide, but I don't know if I can even handle it. It is just a morally oppressive route to play a game. But it's brilliant because the game again shifts and changes based on what you've done. Imagine playing Knights of the Old Republic, where once you start going full Sith, people run away from you, or they refuse to deal with you because they don't want to get killed. It's one of those things that, again, if you're going to go that way, you have to fully commit to it, or it just comes off as a half-ass attempt. And we are approaching 14 minutes into this critical thought, and again, this is something we are not going to answer or completely talk about in one video. If you have any other topics or thoughts you'd like me to bring up about morality in upcoming critical thought, leave them in the comments below. But otherwise, we're going to wrap it up here. So, he'll let him, wave goodbye there. Thanks for watching today's Critical Thought. If you enjoyed it, be sure to check out the Patreon campaign to help support these videos, game wisdom, and more. And I will see you all tomorrow with another one. We will be talking most likely about Nintendo. So yes, another lighthearted topic that I'm sure won't get me into trouble at all. So, thanks for watching, and I will see you all then. Take care. Thanks for watching the video, everybody. If you enjoyed it, be sure to like and subscribe to the channel. Leave a comment, of course, share your friends. It always helps out. Check out game-wisdom.com, where I examine the art and science of games. You can follow me on Twitch and Twitter under GWBicer for the latest updates of new content. And be sure to check out our Patreon campaign. You can find us on Patreon under Game Wisdom if you would like to donate and help contribute to keeping Game Wisdom going. Your donations can not only give us the monthly funding we need to keep supporting ourselves, but if we can hit some goals, it will mean more great content for you, and there are some nifty little rewards there as well. Thanks for watching this video, and be sure to tune into the next one real soon.